Okay, today I'd like to show you jelly printing. So jelly printing is something that I discovered a few years ago. It's really versatile and it's kind of addictive. So what I'm going to do is show you a few things that you can do with jelly printing, maybe integrate them into this unit that we've been doing on drawing nature. And then I'm going to show you how to make your own simple jelly plate. This is a commercial jelly plate. Um, it's very permanent. Mine is well used, so it's got a lot of paint stuck on it. I don't really mind that. Sometimes it gets picked up when I do new prints, and it just kind of makes them more interesting. So I guess it's maybe a little bit plasticized. You can see it's about, I don't know, half an inch thick. And the genius of jelly plates is when you press down into them, they give a little. So they allow you to make quite a good contact between your paper and the surface that you've got the paint on, which is something that normally we need to use a printing press for. So it makes printing clear, crisp prints something that you can do easily in your own studio, your own kitchen, for instance. So I'm going to just put some paint on this. I think I'll take it off its base, maybe just put it on like that so it stands a little higher. And I'm going to load it up with some paint. I have some plants here that I'm going to work with. Let's start with the fern. Okay, so the first thing I'll do is put on maybe some Quinacridone Nickel Azo Gold. Now I'm using acrylic paints, and if you don't have acrylic paints and you want to do jelly printing, you'll have to go out and buy yourself 2 or 3 colors. Do make sure you get some titanium white, maybe not as big a vat as this, but you can tint that, for instance, with inks to get some nice tinted lights. But you know, the problem is watercolor just kind of puddles on the surface. So this is actually kind of expanding your materials past what I asked you to get for the course. But, you know, maybe if not now, at some point, you'll want to try this. So this is Quinacridone Gold. I'm actually going to take it off here because there's too much give in that plastic. Actually, it's best to put it on something a bit sticky or a slick. So I will just go and get that. Here's a piece of something called arena board. It's very hard. It's got a bit of a plasticized surface. There we go. That's better. So this is Nickel Azo Gold, and I've spread it really well with my brayer. Nickel Azo is really transparent, so it's not going to be a very heavy color that we lay down first off. I've just got a stack of computer paper here. So my first subject is going to be this fern. And I'm just going to lay the paper down. And then I'm just going to press it with my hands. And let's see what we've got. The fern is a little wet, so this is a little bit, there's a little bit of moisture here, softening the lines of the paint. So we've got a negative print. Now, my idea for integrating it into this unit we've been doing is to make these prints and then interact with them with original drawing and with ink or other materials. So let's put that aside, and sometimes even the second go around we can pick up something, kind of a ghost image that can be kind of nice. So there's the next image. So that's a positive, more positive form as opposed to the negative form here. And it's nice to have a little bit of light in here because now I'm going to go back into this one with a different color. So how about, I've got a few heavy body paints here. they also work really well. You just have to spread them out very well on your palette. So I'm going to put some, maybe mix some teal and some white. You can mix right on the Gelli plate, or you can mix separately. With the heavy body, I like to mix them separately because sometimes they get kind of bound to the plate and they don't mix properly on the plate. The fluid paints work really well to mix right on the Gelli plate, but the heavy body paints are, maybe mix them separately. So I'm just showing you the colors I'm using: yellow ochre, titanium white, and teal. I'm going to have to move it off of here to mix it. This makes a nice sort of organic. The ochre's is already a kind of complex color. It's an earth color, so it's got a little bit of complexity to it. Gives the colors kind of an organic look. So now now we have to keep water handy. Whenever you're working with acrylic, you have to put your brushes and tools right into the water so that they don't dry plasticky. I'm just going to use this. It's got a little bit of Quinacridone Gold on it already, or the Nicolazo Gold. It's kind of a beautiful color. Now let's put this on the plate. Just using wax paper as my palette for the paint. And let's do another one of those. I'll flip it over so we kind of get a reverse image. And we can print it right back onto this page. Let's see what we've got here. You get these kind of complicated, I mean, this is just 2 layers, but we can do another layer and make this a little bit more complicated yet. So if you want to clean off a layer, actually I always do another pull, just because, as I said before, there's usually a bit of a ghost image on there that's kind of nice. You don't want to waste the paint. And then I set these aside and they can be made into other prints. Sometimes these ghost images are almost more beautiful than the first pulls. You can use lots of stencils with Gelli plates too. Maybe I'll grab one and show you how that works. Although, because our focus this week has been on hand drawing, you know, I wouldn't normally include that in this exercise. However, it's interesting for you to see how the stencils work here, so I'll just grab one. So this one's nice because it's a bit botanical. Just dry it off because I was cleaning it off from using it the other day. Okay, so let's do how about a phthalo blue on there? Again, so this is the fluid paint. I'm going to leave a little bit of this color on my brayer just because it might transfer in there and make the blue more interesting. Although the phthalo blue is pretty strong. Okay, so if I put the stencil down, and then I can take this one again, this kind of ghost image one, lay it down. And then we get the stencil, the negative form of the stencil. And again, you know, we can pull that up, see what kind of ghost image we can get from it. There's one. So let's try another one. And that's almost more interesting because we get just a little bit more opportunity now to work into that. We can work into this one, of course, if the next thing we do is use a lighter colors rather than dark. Okay, so what's next? The other thing we can do, if we want to start interacting with some of this, we could take a piece. I really like to work with meat packing foam trays, and just with a pencil you can draw into it. So I'm going to draw in, you know, using the visual language of the fern and observing the fern. Here it is. So I'm just going to draw into the meat packing foam. So this isn't a very careful drawing I'm doing. The materials don't really allow me to make it very accurate, but it's working with the visual language. And I like it because it's just simple materials that anybody has in their kitchen. You can get professional printing foam too, or at least, you know, an art supply. You can get it at the art supply store. I've never used it, and maybe it's a little easier, and you can get it in larger sizes, I expect, than you might get with your meat tray. Okay, so that's pretty simple. I'm going to roll some white, titanium white paint onto this. Actually, I'm going to put it right on top of the green here because I just think it'll be a more interesting light if I have it. Maybe we'll get a bit of that green in there too. And I've got some of the blue here as well. So it's kind of important to really get it evenly mixed in. But I really want it to be quite light, or it's not going to show up. It's not going to be a different enough value to really show up printed onto here. I love the way that the spores came through on this one. The little spore marks. Great. Okay, so now I've made my own stencil basically, right? And it's okay that it's kind of a little bit, I don't know, rough, not very accurate. And I'm going to now print that on top. Let's see, whoops, no, that's not what I'm going to do. You could do that, but what's more fun actually is to transfer it onto the jelly print, because then you get more than one print from it, and you just, I don't know, it's just the jelly print creates more interesting images. So I'm going to print again onto this piece of paper. And we have a little bit of ghost image there. Yeah, not really work. That's the thing about this, is it becomes very experimental. But I think I'll do it again anyway. And kind of interact with what's under there. Nevertheless. See if there's another one we could use to print on. How about this one? This might be interesting to print on too. And if you don't like the kind of rectangular look of that, you can just grab something to mask it with. Actually, I'll pull this one before it dries, and then I'll go get a masking. Piece of masking paper or card. So that's showing up a little better. I think maybe some of the scoring could have been deeper. We'll just deepen some of that. You know, it's all experimental. You just have to figure out how your own materials work and play. Okay, I'll be right back. This is a Yupo paper mask. This is from watercolor paper. So I use these in lots of work, my small mixed media work, even on my large canvases, when I want to get a hard shaped line. And let us just load this up again with paint. I'm going to make it a little bit lighter. Try that again. And I will mask it just to make the shape a bit more interesting. Go over this again. Now we're starting to get some interesting kinds of sense of the shape of that. So maybe I'll do it again over here. Lay that down again. It's all backwards, so it's sort of, you get a mirror image when you print. I'm trying to imagine how that's going to work, but let's just see what happens. I actually kind of love not planning it too much, just letting it evolve. That's the fun of it. Yeah, so those are kind of a bit more fun. I want to get some up in this corner, so I'm going to try that again. Yeah, so I could go on with this. I might eventually just let that dry and use that as a background on which to actually do some positive drawing of the fern. So I'll set that aside to dry, and then I'll go back to it. Let's see if there's anything else we can do with this one. Let's try another fern print in a different color. I just want to show you how the layering works in these. Especially if you're using fairly transparent colors, you can really do a lot of layering. So how about we do, just going to do a very, very thin blue. It's got a little bit of the white in it, the white that was sitting there on the plate. So we'll see what happens. I don't want to lose that orange. It's just so great. Maybe I'll mask that. Okay, so let's see what we've got here. Yeah, so now things start to get kind of interesting. Okay, I'm going to stop this, although I could go on and on. It's so much fun. And then actually just do one more pull here and pull up some of that extra paint. And that I'll just set aside, and I might do something with it, build up some more layers on it. And I'd like to show you how you can make your own jelly print. So stand by. Okay, so here's what I made the other day. Just one of those awful clamshell plastic things, and I was really glad to be able to use it. So I'm just going to pry it out and put it on this glass plate. So this was made with gelatin and glycerin and hot water. So there it is. I could trim it a little bit more evenly along the edges here. It's got bubbles on the bottom, but that's okay. The top is really smooth because that is what was in contact with this surface. So it's quite important to make sure that the surface that you're pouring into is really, really smooth. And you know, you can use cookie tins, especially if they're new or relatively new. Glass baking dishes are great too. So this size is about 5 by 7, requires 6 ounces of glycerin and 4 packets of gelatin and hot water. So I'm going to set this aside. What we do is we empty the gelatin, or the glycerin, 6 ounces of glycerin, into a bowl, or a clean mixing surface. Takes a while for it all to get out. And then we just add the gelatin to the glycerin, 4 packets. So there's the 4 packets of gelatin, and I'm just going to stir it up to dissolve the gelatin in the glycerin. Some little imperfection in there, but that's okay, doesn't matter. It'll get buried inside the plate. So just want to stir it up until you can see that the gelatin is dissolved. And now I'm going to add a cup of water to that. A cup of hot water. And I'll stir it slowly. You don't want to introduce too much air to get too many bubbles if you really you wouldn't want to whip it up. So just stirring it. And it starts to get clearer, so you can see that the gelatin is really starting to dissolve in the mix. And then I pour it into the mold. And within about a couple of hours, that should start to set up. I leave mine in the fridge overnight too. And you can, there's lots of bubbles there, but you can just try to skim them off. As I say, they don't really matter that much because they're going to be on the bottom of the plate. This is not the surface that we use to print with. So I just love this because it's just simple ingredients. The glycerin makes it more permanent. You can make them just with gelatin, but they don't last as long. They have to be kept in the fridge all the time. So I'm going to set this aside somewhere level, and then later I'll put it in the fridge. And let's just test my sample that I just put out onto the glass plate and see how it works. So let's do some quinacridone magenta. So if you want to make a bigger plate, then you have to use more ingredients. I've got a little bit stuck on there, just take it off. So you can see how smooth that surface is. That little bit is stuck from the side. I need to trim it. And it's really tough. I mean, these will last a really long time. So how about, a friend of mine brought me some beautiful little bits of lichen the other day. These are a little bit wet, so I'll just dry it off. I've been kind of reconstituting them because they were quite dry. Sitting in my studio, I thought it'd be fun to do some of these. So again, we're going to get negative shapes of these. Lung lichen. Let's see what we get there. Now if you want, you can run a brayer over the surface to get even a better contact. But you can get a really good contact just with your hands. So there's some lovely negative shapes of lichens. And let's see what happens if we pull another plate off that. That's the positive, more of a positive form. And I did a little, another little stencil with into meat foam. That's lichen based because I was playing with this the other day. So how about we just do one of those prints just to see what we can achieve here. I think maybe some of that nice soft green would be good. So I'll use my ochre again. A little bit of teal. So these are the heavy body paints again. And titanium white. Make it quite light. So a little bit of yellow in there to get that kind of pale licheny green color. And I'll just load up the stencil. Now I'm just kind of try to leave some uneven edges so I don't get that rectangular shape around it. And print that onto my plate. Let's try it on this one. And then how about this one here? I'll pull another one of those just because we never want to leave extra paint sitting on the surface that could make an interesting part of a print. I'm going to darken that color just a little, maybe with some phthalo. Phthalo blue. Again, I'm just trying to get it fairly even on the page. Although, if you know, there might be some, it might be kind of fun to have uneven transferring of color too. Let's see if that works a little better. Sometimes you need to go back over your drawing because the spaces get filled with paint. So we've got a little bit of the lung lichen kind of mark making there. Let's try another, pull another little piece off there. And I think I'll do one more, maybe one of those masked areas. We'll just put some Quinacridone Gold on there. And I won't do any printing with the plants. I'll just do some masking, just for fun. See what happens. So we've lost a little bit of the lichen form, but I can get it back again. And look at this beautiful thing happening here. So let's get that on here. You can see what I mean about this being addictive. So you get some really interesting stuff happening. And I'll go back and load up my stencil again and see if we can bring back some of that lichen form. And as I said, sometimes when you've used these quite a few times, you lose some of the paint gets built up in some of these channels here. So you might want to just refine it with your pencil. Okay. So things really start getting interesting once you get a few layers in here. So I love this kind of suggestion of line and shape. And then I would use these as underpaintings to go in and work on top with positive drawing. And I'll show you a couple of examples of that I've already done. Here's one I did of fireweed. And here's the stencil that I used. Again, just cut into foam. And here's one that I did with this printing stencil of the lichen. And I've done some positive drawing over top with white ink. You could go in with dipping pens, with your permanent inks, with pencil crayons, inked pencil crayons. So in other words, these are kind of underpaintings that you work into again. But they, it's just a new fun way of working on paper and then integrating them into our books. I think I have one more in here too. Yeah, that's a little collection of seed pods. Not really doing a lot of overprinting, leaving a lot of white space. So I hope that you try jelly printing for yourself. It's a lot of fun.